Nurses request transfers, patients beg to be moved, even the janitors rush through their rounds. Because every night at exactly 3 a.m., the whispering starts. Our story begins with Dr. Sarah Langston, 40 years old, neurologist. Just moved from Pittsburgh to take a job at Mercy. Sarah was sharp, no nonsense, the kind of doctor who could diagnose a stroke in 30 seconds and still have time to grab coffee. She'd heard the rumors on her first day, nurses whispering about the 3 a.m. voices, patients complaining about shadows in the corners of their rooms. Sarah rolled her eyes. Hospital folklore, sleep deprivation, overactive imaginations. She'd debunked ghost stories in med school. This was just another one. But Mercy, it had a weight to it. The air on the 5th floor felt thick, like walking through water. The elevators creaked like they hadn't been oiled since the Nixon administration. And the lights, they didn't just flicker. They pulsed, like they were breathing. October 12th, 2018. Sarah was pulling a rare overnight shift in the neurology ward, 5th floor. The hospital was quiet, too quiet. Just the soft beep of heart monitors and the occasional cough from a patient. Sarah was at the nurse's station, updating charts on her tablet, 2:45 a.m. Then she heard it. A whisper. Not from a room, not from the hallway, from everywhere. Like someone was standing right behind her, but when she turned, nothing. She shook it off, kept typing. But the whisper came again, louder. Sarah! She froze, looked up. The hallway stretched out in both directions, empty. No nurses, no patients wandering, just the flickering lights and the hum of the vending machine. She stood up, walked to the center of the corridor. And the whispers? They multiplied. Sarah, help us! Now, it wasn't one voice. It was dozens. Men, women, children, all overlapping, coming from the walls, the ceiling, the floor. Sarah checked every room. Patients asleep, doors locked, no one in the bathrooms. She called security on her radio. 5th floor, possible intruder. Need backup. Security guard Mike showed up 5 minutes later. Big guy, ex-cop, looked like he'd seen it all. But when Sarah played back the audio on her phone, yeah, she'd recorded it, his face went pale. I've heard it before, he muttered. Always at 3 a.m., always leads to the basement. Sarah laughed, nervous laugh. The basement? Come on, Mike, it's just acoustics, old building. But Mike wasn't laughing. He led her to the service elevator, the one staff used for laundry and supplies. The doors groaned open. Inside, the walls were scratched, deep gouges, like fingernails. They rode down. The elevator moved slow, too slow. The air got colder, thicker, smelled like wet stone and something metallic. When the doors opened, the basement was a labyrinth. Rows of old filing cabinets, broken gurneys, boxes of medical records coated in dust. Mike led her to a locked door at the far end. This is where it gets weird, he said. He had a master key. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. Inside, a room frozen in time. Dusty filing cabinets, a wooden desk, yellowed papers scattered everywhere. And on the desk, a file, thick, labeled in faded ink, Ward 5 Experiments, 1923. Sarah opened it. Photos, dozens of them. Patients in hospital gowns, standing in the 5th floor hallway, but their faces blurred, like the camera couldn't focus. Case notes. Handwritten by a doctor, Harold Vance. Subject 17. Injected with serum V at 0300. Vital signs stable. Reports hearing voices from walls. Claims they're watching. Subject 23. Disappeared from room 512 at 0300. Bed empty. No sign of exit. Sarah's hands shook as she flipped the pages. The whispers started again, louder, right there in the room. "You see us now?" The lights went out. Total black. Sarah's flashlight clicked on. She swung it around. Shadows. Tall, thin, moving along the walls. Not cast by anything. Just there. Mike's radio exploded with static. Then a voice. Not his partner, not anyone. "Don't leave us." They ran. Back to the elevator. Mashed the button. Nothing. The doors wouldn't close. The whispers were right behind them now, breathing. Sarah looked at her watch. 3 a.m. The elevator hummed to life at 3:01. Doors slid shut. They shot up to the 5th floor. Sarah didn't sleep that night. The next day, she went to the local library, found a historian named Ellen Price. Ellen had a file on Mercy, thick as a phone book. Turns out, in the 1,920 seconds, Mercy wasn't just a hospital. It was a sanatorium for tuberculosis. Hundreds died. But that wasn't the worst part. Dr. Harold Vance, chief of staff, brilliant, cruel, obsessed with curing death. Funded by a secret group. No name, just a symbol. A circle with an eye in the middle. Vance ran experiments on the 5th floor, injected patients with a serum, said it would make them immortal. It didn't. Patients started vanishing. Not dying, vanishing. Beds empty, charts gone, like they were never there. Nurses reported hearing screams from the walls, seeing shadows in the corners. One nurse quit in 1923, left a note. "The walls are alive. They speak at 3 a.m. Vance disappeared in 1925, last seen entering the basement, alone, carrying a syringe. His office on the 5th floor was bricked up the next day. Still is. Sarah became obsessed. She went back to the 5th floor, night after night. With a recorder, a thermal camera, a GoPro. And the whispers, they got personal. "Sarah, you know what we are." Her office door started unlocking itself. Charts rearranged, words scrawled in the margins in old-fashioned cursive. "Help us." Monitors glitched, static, then faces, blurred, mouths moving, no sound. One patient, a little girl with leukemia, woke up screaming, said a man in a white coat stood at the foot of her bed, whispered her name. His face melted, like wax. Security footage from the hallway showed a door opening at 3 a.m., closing. No one there. But if you slow it down, frame by frame, there's a shadow. Tall, thin, following the door. Sarah tried to transfer, put in her notice. But the whispers followed her home. Her apartment, 3 a.m. Lights flickered. Clocks stopped. Her phone recorded audio she didn't hear live. You know now. She found a Reddit thread from 2015. A Mercy nurse. Same story. Whispers. 3 a.m. Basement. Last post. They're in the walls. I can't leave. Account deleted the next day. Sarah's colleague, Dr. Patel, helped her research. One night, he heard it in his car, radio tuned to static, a voice. "You're next." He quit the next week. In 2020, Sarah finally left Erie, moved to Florida, thought it was over. But in 2023, she got a package. No return address. Inside, a stethoscope. Hers. The one that went missing in 2018. Coiled like a snake. And etched into the bell, a circle with an eye. She threw it away. Burned it. But at 3 a.m., her new apartment in Miami, the lights flickered. And the whispering started again. "Sarah, you can't leave us." Back in Erie, Mercy Hospital still stands. The 5th floor is under renovation, has been for years. But in 2024, a maintenance worker found something. Behind the bricked-up door of Vance's old office, a hidden stairwell leads down to a room. Walls covered in scratches. Thousands of names. Some from the 1,920 Some recent. One worker's flashlight died. He heard it. Clear as day. Don't leave. He ran. Quit the next day. They say if you work the night shift at Mercy, don't walk the 5th floor alone. Don't look at the walls too long. And if you hear your name at 3 a.m., don't answer. Because the whispering halls of Mercy Hospital, they don't just echo. They remember. And once they know your name, you're part of the walls. Forever. Strange, dark, and true. Room 13 at the Blackwood Hotel. If you ever find yourself in Savannah, Georgia, walking those humid, moss-draped streets where the gas lamps still flicker like they're running on real flame, you might pass a 3-story brick wedding cake of a building called the Blackwood Hotel. From the outside, it looks romantic, iron balconies, magnolias, that perfect Southern Gothic charm tourists pay good money for. Inside, the lobby still has the original grand staircase, a massive oil portrait of the first owner glaring down at you, and a smell that's equal parts old money and something faintly metallic, like a penny left on a grave. The staff are polite, quiet, and they will do anything to keep you from being assigned to the 3rd floor after dark. Clara Bennett didn't know that when she checked in on the 16th of October 2023, 34 years old, travel writer, professional skeptic, the kind of woman who once spent the night in the Lizzie Borden house with nothing but a thermos of coffee and a smirk. She was in town to write a piece on historic hotels with character. The clerk, an older woman named Evelyn with a silver bun and eyes that had seen too much, slid a heavy brass key across the counter and said, "Room 13, 3rd floor. Elevators are temperamental after sunset." Clara laughed, asked if it was the superstition thing, and Evelyn's smile never touched her eyes when she answered, "Just keep the curtains closed after midnight, dear." Room 13 looked like every haunted hotel room you've ever seen in movies, only real. A towering 4-poster bed, velvet drapes the color of dried blood, wallpaper with a damask pattern that seemed to shift when you weren't staring directly at it, and a mirror over the dresser that felt a few inches too tall for the frame. Clara set up her laptop, took her photos, and went to bed, telling herself it was all atmosphere, nothing more. At exactly 2 a.m., she woke up to the sound of fingernails tapping on glass. Tap, tap, tap. The curtains were drawn tight, but they bellied inward like a woman in a long dress was pressing against them from the outside, breathing slow and patient. Clara grabbed her phone. The screen lit by itself and opened straight to the front camera. In selfie mode, she could see her bed behind her empty. And standing at the window was a tall shadow in the shape of a woman, head tilted at an angle no neck should allow. Clara spun around. Nothing was there. The phone kept recording for 3 more seconds. In those 3 seconds, the shadow leaned forward until its veiled face filled the lens. Then the feed cut to static. She threw on a robe and ran into the hallway. The corridor stretched farther than it had any right to. The sconces flickered in perfect sequence, like a heartbeat made of light. The brass numbers on the doors shimmered 12, 14, 15, no 13 at all for a moment. She blinked, and 13 was back, colder than the rest. Soft footsteps followed her, exactly in pace, the way a child mimics an adult without ever catching up. She did not look back. She took the stairs 2 at a time, burst into the lobby, and found the grandfather clock frozen at 2, the night clerk gone, and the front doors locked from the inside. It took 20 minutes of pounding before someone let her out onto the street, barefoot and shaking. The next morning, Evelyn poured coffee with trembling hands and finally talked. In 1927, a woman named Abigail Harper checked into room 13 and vanished from a room locked and bolted from the inside. All that was left was her diary open to a single line. The eyes in the window never blink. The room stayed sealed for 30 years. When they finally reopened it in the 1,960 seconds, the complaint started immediately tapping at 2 a.m. Curtains moving, though the windows were painted shut, mirrors fogging with burning handprints, guests waking up to find their reflection, smiling when they weren't. Clara spent the day in the Savannah Historical Society digging through microfiche and yellowed police reports. She found the story of the boarding house that had stood on the same spot before the Blackwood was built. In 1876, it burned to the ground with 11 people trapped inside. The only survivor, a woman named Eliza Thorne, spent her last hours screaming about opening the glass before she died of her burns. In Abigail Harper's police file, there was a charcoal sketch recovered from the room. A perfect spiral made of 13 open eyes. That night, Clara went back. She wasn't leaving the story half-written. She set a GoPro on a tripod, voice recorder running, and sat on the edge of the four-poster bed with her notebook open, daring the room to show her something worth printing. At 1:59, the chandelier began to sway, crystals chiming, though there was no wind. At 2, exactly the tapping started again, faster this time, excited. The curtains parted an inch on their own. A woman stood on the other side of the glass in a rotting white dress, veil lifted just enough to reveal 2 pits of absolute black where eyes should have been. The voice recorder caught words that sounded like 3 women speaking in perfect unison: Abigail, Eliza, and something far older. "Clara, come look outside. See what we see." Her reflection in the tall mirror stopped matching her movements. It smiled a slow, terrible smile, while Clara sat frozen. Then the reflection lifted one hand and pressed it against the inside of the glass. Frost spread in spirals from the palm. The real Clara hadn't moved at all. On the GoPro, you can watch the reflection step sideways out of the mirror and stand behind the real Clara, resting its hands on her shoulders while she stares straight ahead, pupils blown wide. The brass key turned in the lock by itself. The door swung open onto a hallway that was no longer a hallway. The carpet had become charred floorboards from 1876, smoke curling along the ceiling that wasn't there a second ago. At the far end, a spiral of green fire spun on the floor, 13 feet across, pulsing like a heartbeat. The woman in white walked into the center of it and lifted her veil all the way. Where her face should have been was just a hole opening onto somewhere else, somewhere full of eyes that all blinked at once. Clara grabbed the GoPro and ran. The corridor shortened behind her with every step, wallpaper peeling away to reveal flames that weren't hot, only hungry. She hit the staircase as every gas lamp flared sickly green. In the lobby, the grandfather clock was still frozen at 2, hands bent into spirals. The front doors finally gave way, and she stumbled out into the street barefoot, lungs burning, the camera still rolling in her hand. She thought that was the end of it. 1 week later, in her apartment in Atlanta, the lights began flickering at exactly 2 a.m., even though every window was sealed and triple-locked. The long curtains in her bedroom bellied inward the same way they had in room 13. Every night, a perfect handprint appeared in the center of her bathroom mirror, and the temperature plummeted 20 degrees in the space of a heartbeat. When she finally worked up the nerve to look at the last file on the GoPro's memory card, the final frame showed the woman in white standing inside room 13 holding Clara's own red notebook. With a fountain pen that shouldn't exist, the ghost wrote one line in handwriting that matched Clara's exactly. "You left the door open." Back in Savannah, the Blackwood Hotel still stands. Room 13 has been booked solid every single night through the end of 2026, always under the same name, A. Harper. Guests who somehow get in anyway report their keys twisted into perfect spirals by morning, mirrors showing the room as it was the night of the 1876 fire, flames licking the walls that aren't burning. In 2025, someone live-streamed from the room at 2 a.m. sharp. 200,000 people watched the viewer count spike, then the camera flipped to the mirror. Clara Bennett's face stared out from the glass, 3,000 miles away and fast asleep in Atlanta, mouthing a single word over and over. "Help." The kid streaming dropped the phone and ran. Security footage shows him pounding on doors that refused to open. When the night manager finally arrived with the master key, the room was empty. The phone still recording, pointed at a mirror that now showed nothing at all. If you ever check into the Blackwood and the key in your hand says 13, do yourself a favor. Give it back. Walk away. Because some doors, once opened, don't care how far you run. Some rooms aren't haunted. They're waiting. And room 13 at the Blackwood Hotel still has a vacancy, with your name on it. The elevator that never stops at Crescent Towers. If you ever have the misfortune of living in a high-rise in Chicago, pray the building doesn't have an Otis Model 13 elevator. Pray harder that the button marked 13 never glows red. Because once it does, the ride only goes one way, and it never, ever reaches the bottom. Crescent Towers stands 47 stories tall on the lakefront, a sleek glass needle that catches the sunrise like a blade. It was finished in 1977, right after one of the worst construction accidents in city history. 47 workers were buried alive when the foundation pour collapsed and the wet concrete swallowed them whole. The official report called it a tragedy. The men who poured the next load called it a tomb. They sealed the hole, built straight over it, and installed a single high-speed elevator that was supposed to serve every floor from lobby to penthouse. They never told anyone the shaft runs 47 feet deeper than the blueprints say. Jules Harper moved into apartment 13B in late August 2024. 31, night shift trauma nurse at Mercy General, the kind of woman who could start an IV in a crashing patient while cracking dark jokes to keep the interns from crying. She'd survived a real elevator plunge in med school. Cables snapped, 6 floors, lived to tell the tale. So when residents whispered that Crescent Towers didn't actually have a 13th floor, she laughed and said, "Good, I hate odd numbers anyway." She stopped laughing on the night of October 13, 11:47 p.m. She stepped into the elevator alone, scrubs still flecked with someone else's blood, pressed L for lobby, and leaned against the mirrored wall. The panel flickered like a dying fluorescent bulb. Every button went dark except one. 13 lit up, blood red, bright enough to paint the whole car crimson. The doors slid shut with a sound like a coffin lid. Then, the elevator dropped so fast, her stomach flipped inside out. The floor counter stuttered. 47, 46, 13, 13, 13. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The cables screamed. Her phone had no signal, but the mirror still worked just fine. Only the reflection wasn't empty anymore. Behind her stood dozens of people, shoulder to shoulder, pale faces pressed against the inside of the glass. Their eyes were nothing but wet black pits, and every mouth was moving at once, fogging the mirror with breath that spelled out names, dates, patient codes Jules had charted just hours earlier. The elevator lurched to a stop. The doors opened onto a hallway that shouldn't exist. Raw concrete, dripping rebar, emergency bulbs flickering the color of old bruises. Brass plates on the doors read 13A, 13B, 13C, all the way down a corridor that bent farther than the building was wide. The elevator doors closed behind her, and the car simply vanished, leaving smooth concrete where it had been. Apartment 13B, her apartment, stood open at the end of the hall. She ran to it because it was the only thing that looked familiar. Inside was her furniture, her dishes, her life, but everything had melted like candle wax. The couch sagged into the floor. The television oozed down the wall in black rivers. On the kitchen counter sat her cat, Luna, perfectly skinned, ribs gleaming, still purring in her dead mother's voice. A single post-it note clung to the refrigerator in Jules's own handwriting, though she had never written it. "Welcome home. Press 13 to leave." She ran again. Every door she opened led to the same apartment, grown worse. Walls breathing in wet heaves, ceiling dripping thick red, her own body lying on the living room floor with its throat opened ear to ear, eyes still blinking up at her, mouthing, "Don't stop at 13." The elevator was back, waiting exactly where it had disappeared. The button panel had only one choice, glowing. She slammed 13. The doors closed, the car fell. The counter couldn't decide. 13, 12, 13, 12. Hands began pushing through the mirror like it was made of water, gray fingers curling around her reflection's throat. Jules' reflection looked straight at her and spoke without moving its lips. "Don't stop at 13. The doors opened to the real lobby. Marble floors, security desk, cold October air rushing in. She stumbled out, shaking, barefoot, covered in someone else's blood that wasn't there a second ago. The wall clock read 11:52 p.m. Security footage later showed Jules stepping into the elevator alone at 11:47 and the car never moving at all. 5 minutes of her just standing there, screaming at nothing. She tried to tell people. No one believed her until she took Victor Lang, a retired Otis engineer who'd worked the original installation, down to the sub-basement. The 1,977 blueprints he pulled from the city archives were wrong the moment you unfolded them. Floor 13 was drawn, then erased, then drawn again in different ink. The shaft plunged 47 feet past the foundation into raw earth that had never been excavated. Victor's hands shook so badly he dropped the roll. "They poured the slab right over the bodies," he whispered. 47 men screaming under 12 feet of concrete. The elevator remembers. Every 47 days, it opens the floor that isn't there and calls new tenants to finish the roster. By October 16, Jules's keycard no longer worked. Apartment 13B was listed as vacant, freshly painted, ready for the next buyer. All her belongings were in a storage unit under someone else's name. The building manager swore she'd never lived there. On October 20, a new resident named Marcus Tate stepped into the elevator at 11:47 p.m. and pressed L. The 13 button bled red. In the mirror behind him stood Jules, eyes solid black, smiling like she'd been waiting weeks for company. Marcus never came out. On November 13, every single elevator in Crescent Towers stopped between floors at the exact same moment. 47 residents, all pressing L for lobby, all watched the 13 button ignite. 47 sets of doors opened onto raw concrete hallways that smelled of wet earth and old blood. 47 people stepped out, some crying, some too stunned to scream. The doors closed. The cars kept falling. The lobby stayed empty. Today, Crescent Towers is condemned, windows dark. A for sale sign swinging in the lake wind. The elevators have been sealed with steel plates and welded shut. But if you walk past on a stormy October night, especially around 11:47, you can still hear it. Cables humming a lullaby no one taught them, the soft ding of a car arriving at a floor that was never built. Sometimes the lobby call button for 13 glows red all by itself. Sometimes a woman's voice drifts up the empty shaft, calm and sweet and utterly patient. Press 13 to come home. The elevator that never stops at Crescent Towers is still falling. It's still looking for the 47 souls it lost in 1977. And every time that red button lights up, it gets a little closer to filling the list. So if you ever move into a high-rise and notice the elevator panel has a 13 that no one talks about, do yourself a favor. Take the stairs. Because some floors aren't missing. They're waiting. And once those doors close behind you, the only way out is down. Forever. The Phantom Carriage on the Midnight Train. All right, folks, if you ever find yourself on a train platform after midnight, especially one of those old forgotten stops where the fog rolls in thick and the schedule's more suggestion than fact, do yourself a favor. Check the carriage numbers. Twice. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just a ghost story. It's a warning. This is the tale of the midnight run through Black Hollow, West Virginia, and Carriage 13. The one that isn't supposed to be there. The one that waits. And when it opens its doors, it doesn't care if you have a ticket. Like I always say, sometimes the truth is way weirder and way scarier than anything you could dream up. So hold on tight because the train's leaving the station. October 28th, 2024. Black Hollow, West Virginia. Population, 412. On a good day, the town clings to the side of a mountain like it's afraid to let go. All crooked streets, rusted rail crossings, and a train station that looks like it hasn't seen a fresh coat of paint since Eisenhower. The midnight train, officially the Coleridge local #9, still runs every night. One engine, 8 carriages, hauling freight, and the occasional passenger brave or desperate enough to ride. It leaves at 11:58 p.m. sharp, cuts through the hollow, dives into the Black Hollow Tunnel, and doesn't stop again until dawn. Emma Carter steps onto the platform at 11:45. She's 32, sharp-eyed, city polish still clinging to her like perfume, even though she's been chasing stories in the sticks for 3 years now. Freelance journalist specializes in debunking the unexplainable. Her editor calls it ghost hunting with a fact check. Emma calls it a paycheck. Tonight, she's after a piece for Hidden Trails magazine, something about Appalachian folklore, specifically the legend of the Phantom Carriage. Locals swear that every few years, someone boards the midnight train and vanishes. Always after 1 a.m. Always near Carriage 13. The conductor takes her ticket. His name's Silas. Been punching tickets since the 70 seconds, face like cracked leather, eyes that don't quite meet yours. Carriage 7, he grunts, clipping the paper with a hole punch that sounds like a gunshot in the quiet. Then he leans in, voice low. Whatever you do, don't go past carriage 8. Carriage 13, it ain't on the manifest. And it don't like visitors. Emma smirks, pockets her recorder, and boards carriage 7. The seats are cracked vinyl. The air smells of coal dust, wet wool, and something metallic, like blood left out too long. Only 3 other passengers. An old woman knitting, a teenager with headphones, and a man in a suit staring out the window like he's waiting for someone who'll never show. The train lurches at 11:58. Lights flicker, then steady. The wheels scream on the rails, and Black Hollow fades into the fog. Emma settles in, opens her notebook, starts jotting ambient details. Dim fluorescent bulbs, slight vibration in floor. Smell, ozone plus mildew. She hits record on her phone. The mic picks up the clack, 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 the low hum of the engine, and something else. A whisper. So faint, she thinks it's wind. But the train's sealed. She plays it back. Emma? Her name? Clear as day. 12:47 a.m. The train dives into the Black Hollow Tunnel. 2 miles of pitch black stone carved in 1,892, no lights inside except what the train brings. The windows go dark, the air pressure drops, and the lights inside carriage 7 dim to a sickly yellow. Emma's phone buzzes. No signal, but the camera app opens on its own. Live feed. It's not showing carriage 7. It's showing carriage 13. The seats are full. Pale figures, unmoving, heads turned toward the lens. Their eyes, black pits, mouths open just enough to show teeth that aren't teeth. One stands. Tall, cloaked in shadow that moves like smoke. It raises a hand, fingers too long, and points directly at her. The train lurches. A screech of metal on metal, like brakes, but the speed doesn't change. Cold air floods the carriage from nowhere. Emma's breath fogs. The door at the rear, connecting to carriage 8, creaks open an inch. A rusted sign swings into view. 13. She stands, heart hammering, and walks to the door. Peers through the grimy window. The connecting vestibule is dark, but at the far end, another door. Open. Red light spills out, pulsing like a heartbeat. Inside, the cloaked figure waits. Head tilted, beckoning. Emma backs away. The lights strobe. Once, twice. Her notebook flips open on the seat. A page she didn't write. Black ink, still wet, scrawled in handwriting that isn't hers. Stay in 13. The train's PA system crackles, dead for decades, and a voice speaks. Not one. Many. Children. Women. Old men. All saying her name in perfect sync. Emma, ride with us. She runs forward, through carriage 7, past the sleeping passengers, into carriage 6. The lights here are steady, but the windows fogged. Handprints appear from the outside, pressing in, sliding down the glass like they're trying to get in. The old woman looks up, finally, and her eyes, they're black. Not shadowed. Empty. She smiles, and her teeth are too sharp. Emma screams, bangs on the conductor's door, but it's locked. The train howls through the tunnel, and the temperature drops to freezing. The next station is 18 miles away. She makes it. Stumbles onto the platform at 1:27 a.m., frost on her jacket, phone dead, recorder still running somehow. She calls Rachel, her editor, from the payphone outside the depot. Rachel drives 3 hours to get her. They hole up in the Black Hollow Diner, the one with the neon eat sign missing the A. Emma plays the recording. The whispers, the chant, the sound of something dragging beneath the train, heavy, wet, endless. The waitress drops a plate when she hears it. "You rode the 13, she whispers, crossing herself. "God help you." That's when Amos sits down. Retired rail worker, 47 years on the line, hands scarred from coal and cold. He doesn't speak until Rachel buys him coffee. Then, quiet, like he's confessing. 1953. October 31st. Midnight run. Carriage 13 was private. Chartered by Elias Vane and his followers. Called themselves the Veil Walkers. Said the tunnel was a gate. That blood and iron could open it. They boarded with trunks, candles, books bound in skin. Conductor tried to stop them. Vane just smiled, said, "We're not leaving. We're arriving." Amos leans closer. Train never made it out of the tunnel. Derailment, they said. But the engine, fine. Carriages 1 through 12, dented, but intact. Carriage 13, gone. Vanished. No wreckage. No bodies. Just blood on the tracks, still warm, and a smell like burnt copper and lilies. But the passengers? They found them. Later. On other trains. Sitting quietly, eyes black, smiling. And every year, on the anniversary, someone new disappears. Always after 1 a.m. Always near carriage 13. Emma can't let it go. She's back in the town archives by noon. 1,953 newspapers. Yellowed, crumbling. Front page. Midnight train disaster, 1-3 dead. But the photos, wrong. The victims' faces, blurred, like the camera couldn't hold them. One article mentions vocal phenomena from the PA after the crash, passengers screaming from inside the tunnel walls. A 1,978 conductor's log. Carriage 13 appeared at 13A, M doors open, empty seats. Invited passenger aboard, he did not return. A 1,999 police report. A hiker found a train ticket in the tunnel, dated 1953, still warm, with fresh blood on the stub. A 2021 TikTok, now deleted, a teenager filming from Carriage 7, panning back, and there it is. Carriage 13. Red light. Figures waving. She rides again. November 1st. This time with Rachel. Body cams. EMF meters. A crucifix from her Catholic grandmother. They sit in carriage 7, doors locked between carriages, 12:55 a.m. The train enters the tunnel. The lights die. Not flicker. Die. Emergency red strips glow, casting everything in bloodlight. The temperature plummets. Frost forms inside the windows. The EMF meter screams, is less than #0. 5# is greater than Rachel's breath catches. Look. The door to carriage 8, unlocked. Open. Beyond it, carriage 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 13. The red glow pulses faster, faster, like a heartbeat racing. Rachel grabs Emma's arm. We're leaving. But the train brakes. Hard. Metal screams. They're thrown forward. When they stand, the door to carriage 13 is right there. Open. Inside, the seats are full. The figures turn, slowly, in unison. Their mouths open, and the sound that comes out, it's not human. It's the tunnel, the mountain, the rails themselves screaming, "Join us." Emma's body cam catches it. The cloaked figure steps forward, hood falling back, revealing not a face, but a void, swirling like smoke in a jar. It reaches, and where its hand touches the lens, the screen fractures. Rachel pulls Emma back, slams the door, but it won't latch. The handle burns cold, frostbite in seconds. The PA roars, "Emma! Rachel! Ride with us!" The floor vibrates, something crawling beneath the metal, claws on steel. They run forward, through the carriages, passengers gone, seats empty, but the windows full of faces. Pressing against the glass, mouths open, eyes black, hands leaving bloody prints that steam and vanish. The train stops, dead in the tunnel. Doors hiss open. Carriage 13 is attached now, right behind them. The red light floods in, and the figures step out. Bare feet on metal, no sound, but the air screams. Emma's final footage. She's running, camera shaking, Rachel ahead, then nothing. The feed cuts to static, but the audio keeps going. Footsteps. Breathing. A wet, dragging sound. Then, Emma's voice, calm, too calm. It's beautiful in here. The seats, they're warm, like skin. Come ride with us, Rachel. There's room. The chant rises, hundreds of voices, forever. Rachel makes it out, alone. At the next station, 4:12 a.m. She's frostbitten, babbling, clutching Emma's camera. The footage ends with a single frame. Emma, sitting in carriage 13, smiling, eyes black, mouth open, but the sound, it's the train whistle, screaming her name. January 2025. A maintenance crew finds something in the tunnel. A bone. Human. Carved with tiny numbers, 13, 13, 13. Still warm. Emma's press badge melted into the rail, the photo burned away, but the name still legible. The midnight train still runs. Carriage 13 is never on the manifest, but passengers see it at 1 a.m. Red light, open door. And sometimes, if you look close, you'll see her. Emma, sitting by the window, waving, beckoning. So, if you're ever on that train and the lights go red, if the door behind you opens and you smell lilies and blood, don't look back. Don't answer when they call your name, because Carriage 13 isn't going anywhere. It's already there. And it's got an empty seat with your name on it. The fog that never leaves Blackthorn Forest. All right, folks, if you're the kind of person who thinks a solo hike through the woods at midnight is a great way to clear your head, especially when the fog is so thick you can't see your own hand, you might want to reconsider. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't about getting turned around on a trail. It's about the trail finding you. This is the story of Blackthorn Forest in Eldridge, Vermont, and the fog that doesn't just roll in. It waits. It watches. And when it decides you're staying, there's no amount of screaming that'll bring you back. Like I always say, sometimes the truth is way weirder and way scarier than anything you could dream up. So, zip up your jacket because we're stepping off the path. Fall 2024. Eldridge, Vermont. A town so small, the welcome sign is hand-painted and half the letters have peeled off. Main Street ends at a gravel lot, and beyond that, Blackthorn Forest. 800 acres of old-growth nightmare. Trees that lean like they're listening, roots that look like fingers clawing out of the dirt, and a fog that hangs year-round. Locals call it the breath. Say it smells like wet pennies and funeral flowers. And lately, it's been hungry. Noah Bennett's the ranger they send when things go sideways. 34. Built like he could bench press a moose. 8 years on the job, seen bears, blizzards, and one guy who tried to outrun a porcupine. He doesn't do ghost stories. Doesn't do cursed woods. But 3 missing hikers in 14 days? That's a pattern. No bodies. No blood. Just packs dropped mid-trail, boots still laced like the forest hit pause. October 17th. Midnight patrol. Noah's loaded. Body cam, GPS, 2-way, headlamp with fresh batteries, flare gun, and a thermos of coffee strong enough to wake the dead. He signs the log at the trailhead. Bennett N. Solo Recon. ETA return 0400. The fog's already there, waiting at the tree line like a living thing. It doesn't drift. It pours slow, deliberate, swallowing the sign behind him. 11 steps in, sound dies. No owls. No wind. Just his breathing and the fog, inhaling. His headlamp cuts a tunnel maybe 8 feet long, then the light just stops, like it hits a wall. GPS beeps. Signal lost. Compass spinning like it's drunk. Radio crackles. Dispatch. This is Bennett. Do you copy? Static. Then a voice. Not dispatch. Dry. Close. Noah. It knows his name. He checks the body cam. Red light steady. He pans forward and the feed glitches. For a split second, the trail ahead is clear. Moonlight. No fog. And standing 50 yards down, a figure. Tall. No face. Just swirling mist where eyes should be. It lifts one arm, slow, like it's underwater, and beckons. Noah blinks. Looks with his own eyes. Nothing. Just fog. But the camera, it's still recording, and the figure takes one step closer. The ground thumps. Once, like a heartbeat under the soil. Noah kneels, presses his glove to the dirt, and it's warm. Pulsing. Footprints appear beside his hand. Bare, elongated, leading off trail. Fresh. Wet. Not his. He follows. Because that's what rangers do. The fog tightens, coiling around his ankles, his knees, like it's guiding him. 12:41 a.m. He stumbles into the clearing. Perfect circle. No trees. Just moss and his notebook. Open. He never took it out of his pack. A page is filled, ink still wet, letters crawling across the paper like insects. Stay in the fog. The trees at the edge, their bark ripples. Faces push out, wood stretching like skin, eyes closed, mouths moving. Noah, 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 in a whisper that's everywhere and nowhere. His headlamp flickers. Strobes. The beam catches the fog, and the fog catches it back. Reflections. Dozens. Pale figures suspended in the mist, arms outstretched, mouths gaping, eyes black holes that pull. They flicker, closer, closer, until one is inches from his face. No breath. No heat. Just cold and the smell of turned earth. Noah swings the flare gun, fires into the air. The red flare arcs, and the fog swallows it, spits it back as a screaming face that dissolves midair. He runs. Branches rake his jacket, roots snag his boots, the fog laughs, a sound like drowning in a well. He bursts out at 2:03 a.m. Trailhead. The fog stops dead at the tree line, like it's afraid of the open. He's soaked, shaking, covered in a dew that smells like iron. Clara's waiting with the truck, headlights cutting through the night like knives. "You're bleeding," she says. He looks down. His gloves? Shredded. But no cuts. Just black streaks under the skin, like roots. They hole up at the Pinecone Diner. Neon buzzing. Coffee that tastes like ash. Noah plays the body cam. The figure. The footprints. The notebook. The faces. The waitress drops a mug when the whispers play. "That's the breath," she mutters, crossing herself. Amos slides into the booth. Old Hunter. Face like bark. Hands that shake only when he talks about Blackthorn. 1,931, he says. Logging camp. 15 men. Elias Crow. Found stones in that clearing? Older than the hills? Carved with eyes that watched. He started cutting at night, alone, chanting. Said the fog was a mouth. That it needed feeding. One dawn, fog rolled in thicker than milk. When it lifted, nothing. Just their axes, arranged in a spiral, handles warm, blades etched with the same eyes. Search party found one page. Elias's journal. It sings when it's full, it's never full. Noah's in the Historical Society by 8 a.m. Dust and microfilm. 1,931 headlines. Loggers vanish forest claims 15. Photo of the spiral. Tools glowing like they're wet. 1,942 hikers letter. Fog knew my dead brother's voice. Followed me for miles. 1,976 police report. Camper's tent found inside out. Sleeping bags stuffed with moss that moved. 2022 dash cam from a logging road, fog crossing the pavement, forming a hand that waves before dissolving. The forest escalates. October 20th. Noah and Clara go in at dusk. Shotguns. Flares. Iron filings in their pockets, old hunter's trick. They reach the clearing at 12:37 a.m. The fog rises, not drifts, rises like a wave. Red glow beneath, pulsing like a heart. Trees groan, bark splits, eyes open inside the wood, blinking. Clara's flare arcs. The fog catches it, molds it into a face, her face screaming her childhood dog's name. The ground erupts, misty hands claw up, gray, cold, wrapping around their boots. Noah fires the shotgun into the dirt. The blast reveals teeth, mossy, sharp, closing. They run. The trail loops, same trees, same clearing. 4 times. Clara's radio screams her dead father's voice. You were always weak. Noah's compass melts, glass dripping, needle fused pointing back. They escape at 3:19 a.m. Clara's leg blistered, black veins spidering from where the fog touched. Noah's body cam, cracked, but still recording. Final frame, the clearing, now a spiral, and in the center, his flare gun, still smoking. Dr. Evelyn Marsh meets them in the library sub-basement. Maps older than the town, 1,898 survey. Blackthorn sits on 3 converging ley lines, ancient burial site. Cult of the Veiled Breath, 1,690 seconds. Believed fog was a living archive, stored souls like books. Elias Crow? Great-great-grandson? His rituals weren't worship. They were cataloging. Every soul fed to the fog, added to its memory. It doesn't just take bodies. It takes you. Your first memory. Your worst fear. Your voice. October 24th. Noah's final patrol. Alone 4 body cams. Drone overhead. UV floodlight. A vial of his own blood, Marsh's desperate plan. Give it a taste of you. Maybe it'll let the rest go. He hits the clearing at 1 a.m. exactly. The fog surges, red, thick, alive. Trees peel open, bark screaming, revealing a wall of faces, mouths open, eyes black, singing in voices he knows. His mother, his first crush. The kid from Kandahar who didn't make it home. The drone feed shows the truth. The clearing isn't ground. It's a throat. Moss equals tongue. Fog equals breath. Figures rise, not from the mist, from the earth. Hundreds, eyeless, mouths splitting into more mouths, hands splitting into fingers of smoke. They don't walk. They flow. The chant isn't sound. It's memory. Every secret Noah ever buried, weaponized, pulling him in. He hurls the blood. The fog drinks, recoils, then laughs. A sound like 1,000 graves opening. UV, light blasts, figures, glitch, flicker, dissolve into static. Noah runs, cams rolling. Chest cam shows the fog chasing, forming his face, his scream, his childhood home burning. He collapses at the trailhead at 1:47 a.m. The fog stops, exactly at the tree line. But it whispers through his teeth, "You left a piece." 2025. A hiker finds the drone, crashed, still recording. Final footage. Noah running, trees uprooting, walking on roots like legs, the clearing widening, a maw lined with eyes. Last frame. Noah's shadow, stretching back into the fog and staying. Blackthorn's trails are closed. Signs gone. Replaced with fresh carvings, it remembers you. Drones show the spiral, now 100 feet wide. 1,931 axes still there? Still warm? And at 1 a.m., if you stand at the edge, you'll hear it. Not wind. Not animals. Noah, calling your name in your own voice from inside the fog. So if you're ever in Eldridge and the fog creeps down the mountain, if your phone dies, your boots sink, and you smell copper and lilies, don't follow the whispers. Don't look for the clearing. Because Blackthorn isn't a forest. It's a library. And the fog? It's checking out. You. The Cries Beneath the Old Market Square. All right, folks, I've got a story for you today that's going to stick with you. It's one of those tales that starts off normal enough, but by the end, well, let's just say you might not look at a quiet town square the same way ever again. This happened in a little place called Havensport, Maryland, a sleepy coastal town where nothing much ever happens, except, apparently, this. And it all centers around something lurking beneath the cobblestones of Old Market Square. They call it the Cries Beneath. Now, Old Market Square looks harmless during the day. Colonial-era cobblestones, a cute little fountain in the middle, benches where old folks feed pigeons, shops ringing the plaza selling antiques and coffee. Tourists love it, kids play there, but come nightfall, especially after midnight, the vibe changes. The air gets thick, heavy, like it's pressing down on you. And locals? They don't walk through the square after dark. Not ever. They'll cross the street, take the long way around, anything to avoid it. Because they say, if you're there at the wrong time, you'll hear it. The crying. Our story starts with a guy named Ethan Walsh. 31 years old. High school history teacher. Total skeptic. Ethan grew up in Havensport, but he'd been away for college, came back to teach at the local high school. He was the kind of guy who laughed at ghost tours, rolled his eyes at local legends. thought it was all old wives' tales and overactive imaginations. But in the winter of 2024, he was working on a project for the town museum, something about Havensport's colonial history. And that's when he first heard the rumors. People were saying there were sounds coming from under the square. Not just creaks or wind in the pipes, but crying, wailing, like people in pain. And not just any people. They said the voices knew your name. Ethan thought it was ridiculous. Probably just old plumbing, or rats, or the fountain's pump acting up. But the more he asked around, the weirder it got. One shop owner told him he'd heard a woman screaming his dead mother's name at 1 a.m. A jogger said her phone recorded a child's voice whispering, "Help me," from right under her feet. And the oldest residents, they wouldn't even talk about it, just crossed themselves and walked away. So Ethan, being Ethan, decided to prove everyone wrong. On December 10th, 2024, he waited until the town was asleep, 1 a.m. He brought audio recorders, a high-quality microphone, his phone, a flashlight, the works. Set everything up around the square, sat on a bench near the fountain, waited. At first, nothing. Just crickets, wind, the occasional car in the distance. Then, around 1:07 a.m., it started. A low sound, like a moan, but not from above, from below. Under the cobblestones? Ethan froze, looked down. The stones looked normal, but the sound? It was growing. Louder, more voices joining in. Men, women, children, all crying out in agony. And then, clear as day, one voice rose above the others. Ethan. He jolted upright, looked around. No one there. The square was empty, but his recorder, it caught it, crystal clear. Ethan, down here. His phone buzzed. He looked down and nearly dropped it. The camera app was open. Live feed of the fountain. But in the water, there was a figure. Tall, gaunt, no eyes. Just black pits where eyes should be. Its mouth stretched impossibly wide, like it was screaming, but no sound came out. It was clawing at the cobblestones from below, like it was trying to dig its way up. Ethan stumbled back. The air turned freezing, his breath fogged, and the ground, it vibrated. Not like an earthquake, more like something pounding from underneath. Thump, thump, thump. He grabbed his notebook off the bench to write down what he was hearing, but when he opened it later, there were words he didn't write. In his handwriting, but he didn't write them. Come below. The streetlights started flickering. Shadows stretched across the cobblestones, and they weren't his shadows. They were faces, dozens of them, mouths open, screaming silently. And, in the fountain's reflection, Ethan didn't see himself. He saw a crowd, pale figures packed tight under the water, arms reaching up, fingers clawing at the surface, eyes hollow, mouths moving in perfect sync with the cries from below. He ran. Didn't stop until he was 3 blocks away, gasping in front of the 24-hour diner. Called his friend Sarah, librarian, fellow history nerd. Met her at the cafe, told her everything. She didn't laugh, didn't call him crazy. She just said, "You need to talk to Agnes." Agnes ran the antique shop on the square, 83 years old, been there her whole life. Ethan went to her the next day. She was closing up, didn't want to talk at first. But when he played the recording, her face went white. She told him about 1783. There was a cellar under the square, hidden, used for secret meetings during the Revolutionary War. But one group, they weren't patriots. They were something else. Led by a preacher named Gideon Holt, obsessed with the occult. They'd meet in that cellar at night, perform rituals, blood rituals. One night, the cellar collapsed. 20 people trapped inside, alive. They screamed for days, clawed at the stones above them, but the town, they didn't dig them out. Some say they were afraid of what Gideon had summoned. Others say they just didn't want to know. The screams eventually stopped. The cellar was sealed. The square paved over. But the cries, they never really went away. Agnes said, as a little girl, she saw something. Was playing near the fountain after dark. Her mom was late picking her up. Looked down and saw a hand, gray, skeletal, pushing up between the cobblestones. It grabbed her ankle, burned like ice, left a scar she still has. Ethan didn't sleep that night. Went to the town archives the next day, dug through everything he could find. Found a ledger from 1783, official record of the collapse. But the details, they didn't add up. The bodies weren't crushed. They were arranged. Hands reaching up, faces frozen in screams, eyes wide open, like they saw something coming for them. Then he found a groundskeeper's journal from 1904. The guy wrote about hearing screams at 1 a.m. sharp. Every night, said he saw shadows moving under the cobblestones, like something walking beneath the stones. One entry said, "It said my name. I'm quitting tomorrow." There was even a police report from 1973. A teenager went missing, last seen sitting on the fountain at midnight. His backpack was found the next day in the water, soaked, and carved into the leather dozens of tiny eyes. Ethan became obsessed. Went back to the square, night after night, with better equipment, infrared cameras, EMF detectors. Sarah came with him sometimes. And things escalated. One night, his recorder picked up a loop. Just 2 words, over and over, at 1 a.m. exactly. "Join us! Join us! Join us!" The cobblestones started oozing. A black, tar-like liquid seeping up between the cracks. It formed shapes, eyes, blinking, watching him. Then dissolving back into the stone. Sarah saw it first, a hand pushing up through a crack, not flesh, more like stone come alive. Gray, cracked, nails like broken glass. It reached for her shoe, scraped the leather, left a burn mark that smelled like rot. Ethan's flashlight started acting up. One night, the beam twisted, like it was being bent by something. Burned words into the ground, glowing red. "Stay below." They brought in an expert, Dr. Clara Voss, local historian, specialized in colonial occult practices. She'd heard the rumors, didn't believe them, until Ethan showed her the evidence. Voss found a letter, 1783, from one of the survivors, someone who escaped the collapse. It said Gideon's rituals weren't just theater. They opened something, a gate, beneath the square, to a place that wasn't here. Something that fed on pain, on souls, and it was still hungry. She found an old surveyor's map, pre-colonial. The square wasn't built on random land. It was on a Native American burial mound, thousands of years old. The stones used to pave the square? They weren't local, shipped from somewhere else, etched with symbols, curses, meant to keep something sealed. But Gideon's rituals, they broke the seal. Voss warned Ethan, the cries aren't echoes, they're bait. But Ethan wouldn't stop. He had to know, had to see. On December 18th, 2024, he went back, alone, full camera rig, live streaming to his laptop in his car. 1 a.m. The cries started immediately, louder than ever. A chorus, hundreds of voices, screaming his name. Then, the cobblestones cracked. Not just a little, a fissure, 10 feet long, glowing red from below. Ethan's camera caught it all. Figures, dozens of them, climbing out of the crack, not walking, crawling. Their bodies fused with the stone, arms too long, fingers like roots, no eyes, just black pits, mouths stretched wide, screaming. "Feed us!" The ground shook, hands burst up all around him, oily, writhing, grabbing his legs, his waist, pulling. Ethan fought, kicked, screamed, but they were too strong. His camera showed his shadow, sinking, like the ground was swallowing it. His screams joined the chorus, then cut off. The crack sealed, the cobblestones smoothed over, like nothing happened. Ethan's car was found the next morning, laptop still running. The live stream, it showed everything, up until the end. Then static, then a single frame. Ethan's face, but his eyes, they were gone. Just black pits, mouth open in a scream. They searched for him, for weeks, nothing. Until April 2025. A construction crew was repaving part of the square, found something under the stones. A camera. Ethan's camera. Still recording, battery dead, but the memory card intact. The footage, it starts where the live stream cut off. Ethan's in the dark, total black, but you can hear him breathing, panicking. Then, a glow, red, pulsing. He turns the camera, and there's the cellar. But it's not a cellar anymore. It's a cavern, endless. Walls made of faces, thousands of them, screaming, crying, their eyes following the camera. And in the center, Ethan sees himself. But it's not him. It's a version of him, fused into the wall, arms outstretched, mouth open, eyes black. It looks at the camera and whispers, "You're home." The video ends with the camera dropping. A hand, Ethan's hand, but wrong, too long, too gray, reaches down and picks it up, turns it to face the real Ethan. He's on his knees, crying, but his tears, they're black, oily, and they're moving, crawling up his face, into his eyes. The last thing you hear is the chorus. All the voices, including Ethan's. Join us. They say if you go to Old Market Square now, at 1 a.m., you might hear him. Ethan, calling from below. And if you hear your name, don't answer. Because the cries beneath the Old Market Square, they don't just echo. They claim, and once they have you, you don't come back. You become part of the chorus. Forever. Strange, dark, and true. The Whispering Halls of Mercy Hospital. All right, folks, I've got a story for you today that's going to crawl under your skin and stay there. It's one of those tales that starts in a place you think is safe, a hospital, and ends somewhere you never want to be. This all went down in a little town called Erie, Pennsylvania, at a century-old brick building known as Mercy Hospital. And what happened inside those walls? Well, let's just say the name Mercy never felt more ironic. They call it the Whispering Halls. Now, Mercy Hospital looks normal enough from the outside. Big red brick facade, white trim. Emergency room entrance glowing red at night. Inside, it's your standard maze of hallways, beeping monitors, fluorescent lights that hum too loud. But there's one floor, the 5th floor, that nobody wants to work. Nurses request transfers, patients beg to be moved, even the janitors rush through their rounds. Because every night at exactly 3 a.m., the whispering starts. Our story begins with Dr. Sarah Langston, 40 years old, neurologist. Just moved from Pittsburgh to take a job at Mercy. Sarah was sharp, No nonsense. The kind of doctor who could diagnose a stroke in 30 seconds and still have time to grab coffee. She'd heard the rumors on her first day. Nurses whispering about the 3 a.m. voices. Patients complaining about shadows in the corners of their rooms. Sarah rolled her eyes. Hospital folklore. Sleep deprivation. Overactive imaginations. She'd debunked ghost stories in med school. This was just another one. But mercy, it had a weight to it. The air on the 5th floor felt thick, like walking through water. The elevators creaked like they hadn't been oiled since the Nixon administration. And the lights? They didn't just flicker. They pulsed, like they were breathing. October 12th, 2018. Sarah was pulling a rare overnight shift in the neurology ward, 5th floor. The hospital was quiet. Too quiet. Just the soft beep of heart monitors and the occasional cough from a patient. Sarah was at the nurse's station, updating charts on her tablet, 2:45 a.m. Then she heard it. A whisper. Not from a room, not from the hallway, from everywhere. Like someone was standing right behind her, but when she turned, nothing. She shook it off, kept typing. But the whisper came again, louder. Sarah! She froze, looked up. The hallway stretched out in both directions, empty. No nurses, no patients wandering, just the flickering lights and the hum of the vending machine. She stood up, walked to the center of the corridor. And the whispers? They multiplied. Sarah, help us. Now, it wasn't one voice. It was dozens. Men, women, children, all overlapping, coming from the walls, the ceiling, the floor. Sarah checked every room. Patients asleep, doors locked, no one in the bathrooms. She called security on her radio. 5th floor, possible intruder. Need backup. Security guard Mike showed up 5 minutes later. Big guy, ex-cop, looked like he'd seen it all. But when Sarah played back the audio on her phone, yeah, she'd recorded it, his face went pale. I've heard it before, he muttered. Always at 3 a.m., always leads to the basement. Sarah laughed, nervous laugh. The basement? Come on, Mike, it's just acoustics, old building. But Mike wasn't laughing. He led her to the service elevator, the one staff used for laundry and supplies. The doors groaned open. Inside, the walls were scratched, deep gouges, like fingernails. They rode down. The elevator moved slow, too slow. The air got colder, thicker, smelled like wet stone and something metallic. When the doors opened, the basement was a labyrinth. Rows of old filing cabinets, broken gurneys, boxes of medical records coated in dust. Mike led her to a locked door at the far end. This is where it gets weird, he said. He had a master key. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. Inside, a room frozen in time. Dusty filing cabinets, a wooden desk, yellowed papers scattered everywhere. And on the desk, a file, thick, labeled in faded ink, Ward 5 Experiments, 1923. Sarah opened it. Photos, dozens of them. Patients in hospital gowns, standing in the 5th floor hallway, but their faces blurred, like the camera couldn't focus. Case notes, handwritten, by a doctor, Harold Vance. Subject 17, injected with serum V at 0300, vital signs stable, reports hearing voices from walls, claims they're watching. Subject 23, disappeared from room 512 at 0300, bed empty, no sign of exit. Sarah's hands shook as she flipped the pages. The whispers started again, louder, right there in the room. You see us now? The lights went out. Total black. Sarah's flashlight clicked on. She swung it around. Shadows, tall, thin, moving along the walls, not cast by anything, just there. Mike's radio exploded with static. Then a voice. Not his partner, not anyone. "Don't leave us." They ran. Back to the elevator. Mashed the button. Nothing. The doors wouldn't close. The whispers were right behind them now, breathing. Sarah looked at her watch. 3 a.m. The elevator hummed to life at 3:01. Doors slid shut. They shot up to the 5th floor. Sarah didn't sleep that night. The next day, she went to the local library, found a historian named Ellen Price. Ellen had a file on Mercy, thick as a phone book. Turns out, in the 1,920 seconds, Mercy wasn't just a hospital. It was a sanatorium for tuberculosis. Hundreds died. But that wasn't the worst part. Dr. Harold Vance, chief of staff, brilliant, cruel, obsessed with curing death. Funded by a secret group. No name, just a symbol. A circle with an eye in the middle. Vance ran experiments on the 5th floor, injected patients with a serum, said it would make them immortal. It didn't. Patients started vanishing. Not dying, vanishing. Beds empty, charts gone, like they were never there. Nurses reported hearing screams from the walls, seeing shadows in the corners. One nurse quit in 1923, left a note. "The walls are alive. They speak at 3 a.m. Vance disappeared in 1925, last seen entering the basement, alone, carrying a syringe. His office on the 5th floor was bricked up the next day. Still is. Sarah became obsessed. She went back to the 5th floor, night after night. With a recorder, a thermal camera, a GoPro. And the whispers, they got personal. "Sarah, you know what we are." Her office door started unlocking itself. Charts rearranged, words scrawled in the margins in old-fashioned cursive. "Help us." Monitors glitched, static, then faces, blurred, mouths moving, no sound. One patient, a little girl with leukemia, woke up screaming. Said a man in a white coat stood at the foot of her bed, whispered her name. His face melted, like wax. Security footage from the hallway showed a door opening at 3 a.m., closing. No one there. But if you slow it down, frame by frame, there's a shadow. Tall, thin, following the door. Sarah tried to transfer, put in her notice. But the whispers followed her home. Her apartment, 3 a.m. Lights flickered. Clocks stopped. Her phone recorded audio she didn't hear live. You know now. She found a Reddit thread from 2015. A Mercy nurse. Same story. Whispers. 3 a.m. Basement. Last post. They're in the walls. I can't leave. Account deleted the next day. Sarah's colleague, Dr. Patel, helped her research. One night, he heard it in his car, radio tuned to static, a voice. "You're next." He quit the next week. In 2020, Sarah finally left Erie, moved to Florida, thought it was over. But in 2023, she got a package. No return address. Inside, a stethoscope. Hers. The one that went missing in 2018. Coiled like a snake, and etched into the bell, a circle with an eye. She threw it away, burned it. But at 3 a.m., her new apartment in Miami, the lights flickered. And the whispering started again. "Sarah, you can't leave us." Back in Erie, Mercy Hospital still stands. The 5th floor is under renovation, has been for years. But in 2024, a maintenance worker found something. Behind the bricked-up door of Vance's old office, a hidden stairwell,